Great to see you as well. I know we had a little bit of a fire drill this morning with my internet outage and
Oh my
figuring out
goodness.
whether I could join or not, but I'm so happy that I'm here and
Mm,
we're the last session of the day. How exciting.
I love it. So poor Sandra woke up with internet outage in Honolulu and all while navigating a 3-year-old at home. So, I mean, seriously, good start to the morning.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have got 35 minutes and I am so excited to be talking to you. So I think what a really great place to start would be if you could put a bit of insight, your background and your journey. And it really is a journey so far.
Yes, no, I'd be happy to. And you mentioned it already, but first of all, I'm a proud mom. My most important job to date that I tell everyone, including my boss, to my 18-month-old Skylar. And I have a second one on the way right now. So I don't know exactly what we're in for because it's already a handful with one. But then I look at people who have like 5 or 6 and I'm like, okay, you can't complain. But yeah, just about me, I'm a Danish citizen, but I consider myself very much a global citizen. I've lived in more than 10 countries by now and across 3 continents. And currently, as you also mentioned, our family lives in the beautiful island of Oahu in a city called Honolulu.
I'm so
That
jealous.
some of you might have heard of it, but it's in the middle of the Pacific. And every time, I look at the Ko'olau Mountains here, that are actually just to the left of me, or the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, breathe in that amazing ocean smell. I know that something is just so much bigger than ourselves, right? And it's really the environment, Mother Nature. And I think that's also something I've always had in my DNA, my purpose and passion around sustainability. And it's not just sustainability environmentally, it's really economically and societally. Sustainability is really core to who I am. And what I'm really excited about is that it's becoming essential to every human being now. It's not just something, that there's a niche group that we call hippies or whatever who care about the environment or whatnot. It's every person on the planet that has to care now and is excited to care. So yeah, which actually matches my day job really well that I haven't even touched on yet. But I'm the chief content director or lead content for purpose and sustainability marketing at SAP, which basically means figuring out holistically what are all the investments that SAP has across the globe. We operate in 180 countries and have more than 100,000 people working in our organization, and they're all working on multiple projects, as you can imagine. So my job is to make sure that we're telling the holistic story of what we're doing, both on a global level, but also down to the regional levels. And it's a really exciting job. I get to interface with a lot of folks from around the world. And something that always gets me really excited is when I get to work with SAP employees who are not only doing their day job, but they're running like nonprofits on the side, that they're connecting to whatever they're doing in their day job. And something, that I've been a big advocate for a long time is the side hustle. So not only having your day job, but having something on the side. So whether that be a nonprofit, and I have some examples from my team alone. I have a person who runs a nonprofit. I have a person who has a board game company, and I have a person who has a writing business next to her day-to-day work, right? And I think those are really important aspects of just being fulfilled at your daytime work as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fantastic. It would be great if you could elaborate, because I mean, you really have lived around the world, from Denmark. I'm not going to mention the soccer yesterday, to
very tough.
to Japan, to New York. Could you talk a little bit about sort of the gender equality and how potentially this differs culturally?
Yes, and I am happy that you're not diving too deep into the soccer, even though I know your home country beat my home country last night, UK versus Denmark. But we were also quite ambitious to play against the UK. The UK has always beaten us, and I think the last time we even reached the semifinals was in 1992, if my memory is correct.
Beaten us, because I think it's been like 50 years for the UK. Anyway.
Yes. But congratulations on that front. But yeah, it is true. I've lived in different places, and I think a lot of people nowadays, as we're becoming more global, get exposed to different cultures, right? Whether you actually get to live in the countries or you get to work in a global company where you're exposed to these different cultures. But from my perspective, the hierarchies and the biases and the discrimination look very different, and the especially three particular countries that I lived in: Germany, Japan, and America. In Germany, I would often be perceived as a secretary to my peer who happened to be 10 years senior to me in age, but organizationally we were on the same level. And in Japan, I was able to get away with a lot because I was considered what they refer to as gaijin, so a foreigner. But my Japanese female peers really struggled with having a voice at the table, and often told me that they felt Japan really needed to import a lot of female foreigners to change up that dynamic, right? And change up how the voices were represented at the table. But it was a very different culture, and it also, you get a lot of empathy for these different people around the world as they struggle with either more bias or even less bias in some places, right? I'm from Denmark, which is very non-biased when it comes to especially the gender gap, and other countries that have less of a gap to bridge, and then there are countries that just have huge gaps still, and we need to bridge them all.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I'm going to go slightly off script actually for a second, but what would you, if you went back in time, what would you give advice to Sandra, who was just starting out in Denmark? Is there anything that would spring to mind that you would like to take back in time to say, this is something that I wish I had known, or sort of?
That is such a good question. And I think just your ability to be assertive and your ability to say no, which also comes with experience and confidence, right? So I think a lot of people, as they kind of progress in their careers, that becomes a common narrative, I think, for a lot of especially women, because we start out by being very accommodating to everyone, trying to do everyone's jobs, trying to, say yes to everyone, please everyone. But, the older I get and the more experience I gain, I realize, just the importance of being able to say no, and you can say no in great ways. Like, you can say no in nice ways. It doesn't have to be, the strict no's, and because then we face, another big bias around women being, all kinds of words, right? And it's, and I think, that's a really, really important piece of advice that I wish I would have known earlier on in my career.
Very good advice.
Because I worked a lot of hours in the beginning of my career.
Yeah, me too. I know what you mean. So SAP, it really is a power brand. And, I think a lot of people, including myself, has really thought about SAP being sort of a developing software. Could you give us a little bit more sort of insight in your own words as to exactly what SAP does and how it kind of impacts people's lives?
I love that you asked this question, because there was actually a really fascinating survey that we conducted, I believe 5 years ago, from the SAP brand and marketing team, that actually informed us that some people, or actually a lot of people, thought that SAP is that button, on your remote control that translates everything into Spanish. So when they saw our brand, they would be like, oh, it's that button on the remote control, right? Because it's much more of like a household item, a remote control, right? And then people would see that in a different context. But SAP, as you mentioned, is an amazing and highly valued brand. And to be honest, a lot of people don't know what we really do other beyond developing software. So just to provide some context around the scope and scale of what SAP systems do, is that, one of the biggest metrics or scalable things that we do is that we touch 77% of the world's transaction revenue. So that means that, everything that you're exposed to that is a transaction or has a transactional value has a 77% likelihood of having gone through an SAP system. Wow. And that number is substantial. And what that means to you as an individual is that when when you woke up today, you've probably already been touched by SAP a number of times without even knowing it, from the coffee that you picked up at your local coffee shop to the gas or electricity you pumped into your car. There's countless of experience in our daily lives that are powered by these large enterprise software systems. And chances are, a large percentage of those have been powered by SAP. So at the end of the day, we're in the business of making the world run better and improve people's lives. That's really been our mission from the very beginning of when our company was founded. And the whole notion of helping the world run better is because through technology and through systems that work, right, we can accomplish incredible things. And I think COVID has been, an incredible, but also really difficult use case to look back at, but technology has really been essential for us to survive these past 18 months, both in procuring equipment for hospitals to just staying connected like we are right now in a virtual setting. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Could you give us all a little bit of a picture of what purpose and sustainability content means to SAP and how it can be used as a marketing tool?
Yes, I'd be happy to. It's such a good question. I think in our work, we tend to look at purpose as the aspirational aspect of purpose and sustainability as the activation. So the two A's. Purpose should really be, what we dream and aspire to do. And then sustainability is how we're doing this in action. And purpose and sustainability has also evolved tremendously over the course of the past 6 years, where I've had the privilege to work very closely on these topics. And when we first started out, it was mainly a programmatic effort and a brand exercise, but now it's being embedded into everything we do, from product development to how we sell, to how we account, to how we measure, and to how we manage our own operations, also very importantly. The urgency and the relevancy and traction it's getting at the highest level of organizations, both at SAP, but we also see it in the industry as a whole, gives me just incredible hope that we'll be able to move mountains, which is what we're required to do in order to reverse the immense environmental challenge, especially that we're facing right now.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I love that. I'd love us to lean into how your team is helping to promote the SA business and its value into new audiences. What type of audiences are you reaching out to you, and how do you decide on the best way to engage them?
That's also such a great question, because I think in the beginning, when we embarked on this journey around communicating what we were doing from our purpose and sustainability aspect, we were just trying to reach everyone, right? And we were trying to reach people, citizens and, civil society and customers and partners and everyone. And of course, we do need to reach a lot of people, but I would say that the most important stakeholders to get in the same room right now to scale, SAP's sustainability efforts are 440,000 customers. I would say government and policymakers are really important when it comes to sustainability. Academia is really important for educating the next generation, making sure that we're uplifting, the next chapter or the next era of business, and then social entrepreneurs have also proven to be just such an integral stakeholder in coming up with new innovative ideas and business models on how to conduct business. Something that I always say is that we're only as sustainable as our ecosystem. So SAP can be, just as sustainable as we want to, but if our 440,000 customers are not sustainable, then that's on us too, right? It's our responsibility to power them with technology that can enable them to become more sustainable. And one thing that I also like to say is that we all have to board the same train, and our destination has to be a sustainable economy, environment, and society.
No, I totally agree. I read a lot of the content is built around the UN sustainability goals. Can you explain a little bit about that and perhaps give some context on how SAP created the alignment with the UN?
Yes, no, I'd be happy to. And just, I guess, a quick info on what the sustainable development goals are. So there's 17 of them. It's a framework that was developed by the United Nations. It was actually an evolution of the Millennium Goals that were launched back in 2000 that never, unfortunately, got a lot of traction. So they rebranded it in 2015 because, you know, there's more urgency than ever to reach sustainable development by 2030 was the deadline that was set up. And these goals range from anything from climate action to gender equality, to inequalities as a whole, to quality education, to you know, alleviating poverty around the world, and just all these massive scale problems that we have around the world. And since the inception in 2015, SAP has been on board as a company. We were actually one of the first corporations to sign up for the goals. Our CEO at the time went to the UN headquarters in New York City with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, given that SAP is a German company, if I didn't mention that before, to commit our entire organization to solving the 17 goals and challenges that the world is facing. And since then, you know, our company has been aligning our products, our programs, our partnerships, and our people up against the goals. And that will remain until the deadlines reached in 2030, or when we achieve true sustainable development. But it's been really amazing to skill up our workforce, because that was a 2-year exercise in itself, just educating the entire SAP workforce on what are the UN Sustainable Development Goals and how are they relevant to you and your daily work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that really, that would be where to start.
Yes.
So digging a little bit deeper into the SAP ecosystem, you mentioned on our call last week that there was recently a platform launch called Chasing Zero. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, no, I'm so happy you brought this up, because this is really, you know, my baby right now, and what we're going to market with around our commitment to purpose and sustainability. And Chasing Zero is not only our corporate sustainability narrative, it's, as you mentioned, a platform both for executive thought leadership that provides unique points of view and insights into sustainability related transformation, but also across a number of different activations, from products to programs to events to everything that we do that engages with our greater ecosystem. You know, the whole notion of Chasing Zero is really inspired by companies being able to effectively lead the way to a world of zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality, which leans up very well up against the pillars that I mentioned in the beginning of our call: economy, society, and environment. And those have always been 3 really important pillars to SAP. So it's just different language, you know, that we're going to market with to make it a compelling story as well, and to get everyone excited about the mission ahead of us. And, you know, and that's really what it's all about. It's about unifying our industry efforts around climate action, circular economy, and social responsibility to make this happen.
No, I mean, it's so inspiring. It's fantastic. So let's switch gears a little and talk about the women at SAP and the industry as a whole. We all know that women have been especially hit hard with the pandemic, and you have been in a position at SAP working within sort of the equality. I would love to know a little bit about what SAP has been doing to support women, and really what's resonated with you throughout the whole area of the pandemic.
Oh, I love that you bring up this question too. I think one of my favorite efforts, you know, that we launched during the pandemic, and which is running still very actively, is a partnership with an organization called Hey Mama. And Hey Mama is just an incredible, you know, organization dedicated to empowering women and enabling women who happen to be moms as well, with all the right tools for them to be able to manage, you know, work-life balance, to getting proper funding for whatever they're, you know, they're building, if they're entrepreneurs. And we've been very invested into the entrepreneurial section of the organization. So the community of entrepreneurs that, you know, that live within the Hey Mama organization. And right now we're running a mentorship program for female mothers who are also entrepreneurs. And I'm actually a mentor in one of the groups. And we have a person in our group who's not a mom, but she's a plant mom. So she has a lot of plants, and she has this incredible organization that matches gardening with mental health. because gardening is such a big component to, reducing stress and improving mental health. And so I just think that's really cool that she signed up for the program, even though she's not a mom to a child, she's a mom to plants. And and she's doing such an important job in the industry. And basically what we're doing is we're equipping, all these women who are part of the program, and also a lot of non-binary people as well. So I shouldn't say all women. It's a very diverse group, and of people who are just there to make a difference, and most of them happen to be parents as well, and which just gives you an extra obstacle, especially during COVID. That's the biggest number of people that we've seen leave the workforce have been because of their inability to manage both work and households. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And the Hey Mama partnership has been, really instrumental in making sure that we're equipping them with grants and with technology and with networks to really build out their businesses from the entrepreneurial side.
Awesome. And I think sort of the element of flexibility, like that's what's needed. I mean, the world has changed so significantly that, I know that when we were talking last week, when I heard that you had moved from New York to Hawaii, I was like, why didn't I do that? That was dumb of me. I should have so done that. But I mean, good for you. And to be able to actually navigate and to sort of now this world that we're in, that everything is sort of virtual, but yet still starting to come back to in person. I just love your story about that move and that transition, and, taking that risk and doing what you did to move your family out there. I think it's just so inspiring.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I must admit that SAP is really leading by example when it comes to flexibility. And we actually just launched a huge public, announcement a couple of months ago called Pledge to Flex. Right. And it's essentially a pledge to create the most flexible workplace in the world, right? And still performing or outperforming, in our industry. And I think that's really amazing, and it's awesome to be part of, because I have that flexibility, and I want to make sure that we're influencing other companies as well to provide that flexibility to especially people who have other commitments as caregivers outside of work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you have any advice for female and male leaders around sort of pragmatic ways that we can help support women in sort of getting back into the working environment, or sort of how we can move things forward from where we are right now?
Oh, I love that question too, Rachel. So I think, first of all, I love that you've been addressing both men and women in this panel, even though, it's a women's event. I think it's so important that we're addressing our male peers as well, because I think that they struggle with a lot of the same things that we do, especially around the flexible workplace, etc. But I think it's important to point out that this is not a gender issue. It's a socioeconomic issue that will implicate long-term consequences for both men and women. So I think whether we are men or women, we're in a position to have influence, and we need to use that influence to advocate for diverse talent in our organizations. And the data proves it again and again and again that our organizations will be more successful when they have diversity across the board, from the top to the bottom line of the organization. We need to have an equal split of gender. We need to have representation of minorities and marginalized communities. And, I think it's our responsibility as leaders who have that information, have that knowledge to change that, and to ensure that, the people that we hire and take on help reflect these diverse organizations that we know will also be more successful for it.
Yeah, and definitely the stats prove that out. There's no doubt about that. So let's finish by talking about the things that get you the most excited in terms of the future of your role, and sort of developing content and partnerships for SAP that drive both sort of business awareness, but also your sustainability agenda.
Yeah, this is such a great one too. With the notion of sustainability becoming profitable and profitability finally becoming sustainable is an extremely exciting intersection to be part of, and it'll change the way that we do business for the better and forever, right?
Yeah. I mean, it used to be just like an add-on. That's how I always used to remember it, whereas now it's becoming an essential part of the marketing, which I love. I just think it's awesome.
Exactly. It's no longer a separate strategy. It's, it's embedded into your core business strategy, which is, it's just been quite the journey, right? To get here. It's always been something that was managed on the side and wasn't really holistically played out. But that's what we're seeing now. And that's really exciting. And I think that's what get me out of bed in the morning and makes me wake up, at 4 a.m. to be on those early calls with our European colleagues and East Coast colleagues. But it's, that's really what excites me about the work. And then from a female perspective, I think this is a huge opportunity for women to make a mark, because if anyone understands, the holistic world and how everything is interconnected, that's something that we are just intuitively really good at understanding. It comes with a lot of empathy too, which is considered, a softer trait and a female trait, even though we see a lot of our male colleagues, also possessing that trait. It's a great trait to have. And it's so awesome to see how it's finally being valued as well in the industry.
That's awesome. And you mentioned about mentorship earlier as well. I mean, how are you actively involved? Is there programs, it sounds like within SAP, that you work to support one another? How does that look? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have, a ton of different mentorship opportunities, both within SAP and outside of SAP. So there's the Hey Mama mentorship program that anyone can actually apply for. It's on Hey Mama's website. If you look up SAP grants, you can get access to that one. And then we have our SAP.io department, which is, our startup arm, where we work actively with the startup ecosystem, and there's a lot of mentorship opportunities there too. And then, SAP people are just, I always say that SAP stands for super awesome people. So if you see a person who works for SAP, just reach out to them, because they tend to be very open and very excited to connect with people outside of the organization, right? So I think if you're looking for a mentor, that works in enterprise software, SAP is a great place to look for one. And I'll be happy to make the introductions as well where needed.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. So I know we're kind of running out of time right now, but I just wanted to, we've got a question here, which I think we may have, it's kind of going back to more the cultural shift internally at SAP since COVID. Have you experienced a change in dynamic of how people interact and work with each other?
Oh yes, huge transformation, not just because of COVID. We also had a gigantic reorganization take place. We are, former CEO for 10 years left the company, I think literally 3 months before COVID broke out. So, so we went through just humongous organizational changes side by side with COVID, raging around the globe. And SAP really changed for the better in many ways, especially around the flexible workplace. We took a really, really deep look at our spend as well, because before COVID, people had been jumping on planes, going to conferences, and just go, not necessarily living sustainably in a business context, when it comes to travel. And so I think that there are so many things that we took a closer look at where, it's just for the better. And the organization will be better fit for it in the future. And then there's the whole, empathy of just being in a global organization, seeing people, in India a couple of months ago when COVID was raging there, how the entire company just came together and started, sending everything that they could, towards India, whether it be resources or donations or, whatever it may be, right? People were just very supportive of each other, and it feels like a global tribe when you're able to come together and support across the board like that. And I think it's brought us closer together. And people who have worked remotely for 10 or 20 years, they're all of a sudden much more connected to the company culturally as well, because now we've all done it together.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
No,
think
it's
that's been great.
fascinating that everyone kind of in the same boat, experiencing the same. There's a lot of sort of, but I mean, I think as well, just I speak to more people now than I think I've ever done in my life. So it's incredible.
Yes, yes.
Amazing. Well, listen, is there anything, last question here, in terms of what you're working on, in terms of eyeballs, people going to have a look at and finding out more about the content you're creating, where should we be directing everyone to read up on all of the great work that you're doing?
So you can always follow our social media channels for purpose and sustainability. They're called SAP for Good, so the number 4. And you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And then, of course, the SAP primary brand channels you can find across every single social medium except from TikTok, which I think is in the works right now. So you might be able to find us there soon too. And then just from a resource perspective, to learn more, go to sap.com/sustainability or sap.com/purpose. It'll take you to the same destination, and there you can read everything about Chasing Zero and our agendas across zero emissions, zero waste, and zero inequality. And you also have the opportunity to connect with us through that page and submit your own Chasing Zero story, and we might pick it up and highlight it as well from there.
Amazing. Sandra, you are a force of nature. That is incredible. And what an amazing story from your entire journey from Copenhagen to Germany to Japan to New York to Honolulu. So that is really, really incredible. I think we are almost out of time. I think Ryan is just, oh, hang on, sorry, something's coming up on my screen. Oh, yep, there he is. Sorry. No, this has been so wonderful. I really appreciate it, Sandra. This was really fascinating and incredible work coming out of SAP.
Yeah, I absolutely loved having this conversation with you, Rachel. What you're doing and just your personal story is so inspiring. And I couldn't be more thrilled than to have had this conversation with you today, and hopefully many more to come.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And good work with like your Wi-Fi outage and overcoming every obstacle.
Thank you.
Wi-Fi can't stop you. If the internet
Nothing
can't stop you, nothing can stop you. Well, Rachel and Sandra, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us. We are actually coming to a close here for our Women in Marketing event. So thank you for bringing us all the way to the end here. And I'll go ahead and close this out now.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Bye, Sandra.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for being here. Really, we know things are crazy. Everyone's working from home. You might have family, friends staying with you. You might have dogs and cats and other animals, and everything else that's distracting you. But thank you for making it all the way to the end of our sessions with us today. There was a lot covered. Want to encourage everyone to reach out, whether they put their information in our chat window or you want to connect with them over on LinkedIn. Either way, make sure you stay in touch, and we're going to keep delivering you nonstop content. And eventually we're going to be bringing back our live events as well. But if there's ever anything that you would like to hear, if there's anything you would ever like to discuss, you can reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat window over here. We can have a conversation about ways that we can continue to expand on the topics. We can elaborate more on specific sessions, or we can keep talking about women in marketing or anything else that you have in mind. We really want to hear it. Again, this is a community that drives our content. And so we would love to hear what your thoughts are. And as a reminder, next week on Tuesday, the 13th of July, we have a consumer engagement summit taking place at 12 o'clock Eastern. We're going to have leaders from Marriott International, American Express, Walgreens, Mondelez, and a lot more. Again, thank you all for being here. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you at the next summit. Thank you.